I am really excited about this upload because we're finally going to be getting around to installing some drivetrain parts that I've had kicking around the shop for the better part of 6 months. And when we're finally done, we're going to have what is possibly the world's only single cab, step side, supercharged, all-wheel drive Silverado. That's right, today we're finally doing the all-wheel drive conversion that I've been talking about since I got the stuff to do it last September. And the reason why I really need to do it right now is because we just finished up the LSA supercharger install. And if you watch the video that we just released last time, you'll notice that we had a heck of a time trying to get the rear tires to hook up and put all that torque and power down to the ground. Because think about it, we have 430 gears, a fairly loose converter, we have a pretty good first gear in the 4L60 transmission, then of course the root style supercharger that provides instant boost. So we got a ton of power to try to manage, and it's not cutting it with street tires and just the back two wheels spinning. So today we're going to make this thing all-wheel drive and send 36% of the power to the front wheels. Before we get to the main action, I wanted to take a real quick second and talk to you guys about the sponsor of this video, Keeps. Now, every time I film and I edit content, like the stuff you're about to see in just a little bit, where I'm laying on the ground working on a truck, I'm just reminded of the fact that like 2 out of 3 men over the age of 35, I am experiencing male pattern baldness. But if I would have known about Keeps some time ago, I could have prevented all that from happening. Keeps is a subscription service that helps men keep their hair. They offer doctor-recommended, personalized, and clinically proven treatments that'll help prevent hair loss and stimulate hair growth. It's all going to be sent to your door every single month, so you never have to go visit a doctor in person. It's going to cost you about half of what it would cost at a pharmacy, and most people notice results within about 6 months. So, to prevent hair loss, all you've got to do is visit keeps.com/LawrenceLT, and you'll receive 50% off your first order. I've included a link down below this video to make life a little bit simpler for you, but that is keeps.com/LawrenceLT. So the transfer case is what's going to send power to the front wheels, and most GM pickup trucks are going to use a traditional 4-wheel drive case that has some sort of a shift mechanism, whether that's shifted mechanically with a lever or electronically with an actuator. But those transfer cases just split the power 50-50 to the front and to the rear, and there's no slip available in between. Yeah, they did use some auto track transfer cases which used a clutch pack, but still technically that's a 4-wheel drive case where not a lot of vehicles actually used a honest full-time all-wheel drive setup. Now the case that I have came from a 02 GMC Yukon Denali SUV, but they also put these in Sierra Denali trucks, some of them, not all of them, some Escalade Silverado SSs, but that's kind of the short list. Like, they didn't use these transfer cases in a whole lot of vehicles, but basically this one's got a viscous coupler inside, and it is all the time going to be sending power to the front and the rear. And the best part is you can drive around on dry pavement and not have it bind up like a regular 4-wheel drive transfer case will. And of course, the main reason why I want to do this is because it's cool, and number 2, because we'll actually be able to hook up and put power down to all 4 wheels when we're taking off, and hopefully get that 0 to 60 time maybe under 6 seconds. So that's the main part that we're going to be installing today, but we also have to throw in a different front differential. This is a 8 1/4 IFS from the same exact donor vehicle, and the only difference between this and the Diff that's actually in the truck right now is that it does not have the disconnect actuator and a 2-piece passenger side axle shaft. There's just a 1-piece axle shaft that goes straight into the spider gears. And of course, this one is re-geared to 430s to match what I have in the rear differential. Of course, that's important to make sure your ratios match front and rear. So anyway, if you're going to be doing this conversion, it's super simple. Everything basically bolts right in, but you do have to start with a 4-wheel drive truck. A lot of people ask me, can you do this with a 2-wheel drive? And no, the answer is no, you cannot, unless you do like a frame swap, because you've got to have a place to physically bolt the front differential. And the front frame of a 2-wheel drive truck is just completely different. And I suppose you could do it on a 2-wheel drive frame, but it would just be a ton of work to fabricate all the mounts and stuff, where you could just go out and buy a 4-wheel drive frame and do it. But anyway, since we have a 4-wheel drive truck, everything will be super simple, and we are going to get started by bolting in the front differential. So I'm recording this voiceover kind of after I have everything edited, and there's one thing I realized I didn't talk about, and that's the why. Like, why am I doing an all-wheel drive conversion when I have a truck that's already four-wheel drive? Because every time I talk about the all-wheel drive conversion, you know, up until this point, everyone would say, well, why don't you just shift it into four-wheel drive? Especially in the last video when I was trying to do the 0 to 60 and I kept having those traction problems. Well, a couple different reasons for that. Number one, I didn't actually shift it into four-wheel drive because first of all, my four-wheel drive system actually did not work. I believe the actual switch module in the dashboard had malfunctioned. I got a couple of DTC codes for it when I scanned the four-wheel drive or the transfer case control module. And because I kind of always knew I was going to be converting to all-wheel drive, I never got around to fixing it. So in my 0 to 60 testing, of course, we just used two-wheel drive. Although to be fair, if four-wheel drive was functioning, it should have provided a very similar traction benefit to all-wheel drive. So the next question is then why didn't I just fix the four-wheel drive system and use that instead of doing the all-wheel drive conversion? Because, you know, people's main argument is like, well, with a four-wheel drive system, you can shift into two-wheel drive, you can do burnouts, you can have all kinds of fun. Well, that's true, and I happen to have another two-wheel drive truck where I can do all that, you know, shenanigans and stuff like that. So for me, I just wanted something that's kind of different. Yeah, it has traction all the time. It has permanent all-wheel drive. You can put it in, you know, dry pavement where you have a four-wheel drive system. You can only engage that on pavement, like say in a straight line, if you're at the drag strip or something like that. But the second you go to turn around, then your four-wheel drive system is kind of useless because it binds up and it causes all sorts of problems. Where with permanent all-wheel drive, you can drive this thing around. And to me, I have always had this cool, you know, I've always liked cars like the STI and the Evo and some Audis and Porsches and other high-performance all-wheel drive cars. So I just wanted to try it out. This will actually be my second all-wheel drive truck that I've built. You know, the first one that's my own and the one that I get to keep. But basically, I want traction all the time, all weather conditions. So it doesn't matter if it's raining, snowing, or if it's dry out, or if we're on, you know, a dirt road or dusty pavement. I've always got power going to the front wheels all the time, and I don't have to wait for four-wheel drive to engage. Got the front differential completely switched out with the all-wheel drive version. It was a direct bolt-in. There were no modifications required. I didn't have to do a custom mount like I did on the OBS truck a while back, but it was actually a little bit more of a pain in the butt to physically remove the diff from the truck. And the main problem was the front mounting ear that kind of pokes up. It just would hit the steering center link when I tried to drop it out. But I kind of figured out that if you twist it sideways and drop the passenger side down, it'll kind of come out. And that's how we got the new one in. It's now filled with fluid. The axles are back in. Everything's torqued to spec. And we're ready to move on to the transfer case, which is actually what makes this all-wheel drive conversion possible. Using an NV149, we talked about that. We talked about applications already. This particular one, I believe it has like 210 or 220,000 miles on it, which is getting up there a little bit. And I actually do have everything I need to completely rebuild this case minus the viscous coupler. And I didn't want to buy one of those unless I knew it really needed it because they're like $800. They can wear out. That's just a normal wear item if they've been, I don't know if it's necessarily abuse, but it's just age and mileage and whatever. But they can wear out. Replacements are available, but I didn't want to buy one unless I absolutely had to. So we're going to put it in as is. I'm not going to rebuild it just yet because whenever I do the 4L80 swap, I'm going to have to completely take it apart again to install the 32 spline input shaft that just replaces this guy here. That's a 27 spline for the 4L60. So rather than taking it apart twice, I'll run it as is for now, make sure everything works, and then we'll take it apart, swap the input, swap the viscous coupler if we have to, swap all the bearings, the chain, the oil pump, and all the other upgrades that I have. Just kind of one and done. So anyway, for now, since we're putting it in as is, it's a simple R&R job. So it's time to go back underneath the truck. good time to get a cramp. The mechanical portion of the install is 100% complete, and for the most part, everything went exactly like it should have. No major surprises there. I did have some weird things going on, which I can't quite explain with the electronic side of things, and I'll explain that in just a second, but it has me scratching my head, and I don't like that feeling because, well, I mean, it doesn't happen that often, to be honest, but if I can't figure it out, I am literally going to lose sleep over this until I come up with a solution. I do have a workaround. The truck can run and drive. In fact, I just came back from about a 20-mile test drive. The ring and pinion in the front diff is 100% brand new. We re-geared it. It's a 4:30 ratio, so I can't go out and instantly do some wide open throttle pulls to see how much quicker our 0 to 60 time is, but the one thing I noticed so far is there's no weird noises, there's no weird whining. I know I have power flowing to all four wheels because I tested it right here in the shop before I went for a test drive. No leaks, nothing weird going on other than electronics. In terms of the transfer case though, the old one is about 1 inch longer than the new one. So I did swap drive shafts. That's the front one, and I had the new, or a replacement front drive shaft that came from the Denali that bolted right in. And the rear drive shaft, I actually just used the original one that came with the truck because even though it is about 1 inch too short, when I lowered the rear end of the truck, the drive shaft kind of gets pushed a little bit closer to the transfer case anyway. And the yokes on those things are like 6 inches long to begin with. So there's plenty of engagement with the rear drive shaft. And I didn't want to mess around with custom ones, number one, because I didn't need to, and number two, whenever I do the ADE swap, I'm going to have to get all new drive shafts anyway. So mechanically, that's kind of everything. In terms of wiring, there's one little harness right here you can unplug. This goes basically from the side of the fuse block underneath the hood down to the front axle disconnect. So that like stub harness just unplugs. You don't have to cut anything. And then on the transfer case, this one, there's a lot going on, but mostly it's just stuff being unplugged. So there's the actuator there, you unplug that. There's some internal position sensor thing you unplug. There's 3 speed sensors on the NP246, one for the front output, one for the rear output, and then another one for the rear output. But this one right here is the one that you'll end up using on the NV149. It's got like a purple and yellow wire, I think. That plugged in. The speedometer works just fine. The only weird thing that's going on, which I cannot explain, is now for some reason it's gone into like an anti-theft mode. Now, I don't know what unplugging all that stuff like how that would have affected the anti-theft. Basically what I did is when I first did the conversion, I just unplugged the fuse for the four-wheel drive system. I unplugged the switch in the dashboard and I replaced it with a little pocket. And then I started the truck up and it had the service 4x4 light pop on, and then it actually wouldn't even start at first because it went into anti-theft. So that really had me scratching my head because I didn't mess with any system in my mind that would be related to that. I went back after the fact and I unplugged the transfer case control module that's hidden behind the headlight switch in the dashboard, and that killed the service four-wheel drive light, but for some reason it still was in that weird anti-theft mode, and I was actually able to work around it. I just flashed a tune in and I disabled the VATS system in the ECM, but I got to stare at that stupid security light when I drive the truck around. So I got a couple different scan tools around the house, and nothing that I have here would actually read whatever was going on. I think there's a dedicated module for the security system on the truck. I tried the Relink VATS function in HP tuners, that did nothing. And I have two other scan tools and neither one of them would even read it. So if you got a Tech 2 scan tool and if you'd be willing to let me borrow it, that would be awesome. Maybe I could somehow change some calibration. I don't know if I need to go into the body control module and let it know that it's now no longer a four-wheel drive. I have no idea. But like I said, though, at least for now, I can drive the truck. I just have to stare at that stupid light on the dashboard, which is kind of frustrating. So anyway, brand new gears up front. I did go for test drive. We're going to do a break-in before we go to LS Fest and instantly start romping on this thing. So I have about 2 weeks to put as many miles as I can on this truck to hopefully get the front differential fully broken in. And to be perfectly honest, I don't know if the rear diff is, I mean, it's broken in now after all those wide open throttle pulls, but I don't think I have quite 500 miles on it since we did the rear end a long time ago, but now it's been sitting in the shop getting worked on. So anyway, that's where we're at. The all-wheel drive was a 99% success. I can't wait to do some good launches and see how quick this thing is going to be from 0 to 60. We're getting the thing wrapped this in just a couple of days. Actually, we're getting a color change done. It's kind of a throwback to one of my all-time favorite vehicles that I've ever owned. That's what's going on, guys. We'll see you in Vegas in the 18th of April, 24th, somewhere in there. All right, guys, quick random update. I have no idea what happened, but the security light just kind of went off on its own. This is actually the next Monday. I'm driving the truck to get it wrapped right now. I just noticed when I started the truck up this morning, no more security light. The only thing is the check engine light, but that's just because I have the MAF sensor failed because I am still kind of working on the tune. So can't explain it, don't know what happened, but no more security light. So all is good with the step side.